Okay. You're on.
Wow. Okay, Erev Tov, everyone. Okay, so continuing Yom Rishon, it's Sunday, so continuing our study of Mesillat Yesharim. We've been discussing the introduction. I'm going to skip to the end of the introduction just because of the format and the way that we're doing it. It does tend to get a little bit repetitive if we carry on, but essentially we all know, we've been discussing for 2 weeks what he says in the introduction, the importance of the Sefer, the purpose of the Sefer, which is not to read through things once, but to go through again and understand and to become aware of things that we already know or already should know, but to really become more aware of them, put them in our consciousness and start to implement them in practice as well. So that is the introduction. First parak is called B'biur Klal Chovat Ha'adam Ba'olamo, which is man's duty. That's translated, man's duty in his world. So very, very interesting. Does not say B'biur Klal Chovat Ha'adam Ba'olam. Does not say what is the purpose, what is my obligation, what is my duty to in the world, but is what is the obligation in Ba'olamo, in one's world, meaning each and every individual has got a different tafkid, has got a different job, has got a different set of circumstances, a different set of tools and abilities with which one needs to work towards and utilize those. Of course, the other thing to point out in the title, B'biur Klal Chovat Ha'adam Ba'olamo, right, which the Sifrei Musar talk about a lot. Nowadays, people don't really like talking about chovot. Some people like talking about, certainly not in the modern Hebrew sense, when chovot means debts. That's the money that we owe. We're not talking about that. But chovah in the sense of obligation. It's what I have to do. Everybody talks about zchuyot. Everybody talks about rights. You know, it's my right to have X and it's my right to have Y and what I should have. And a society that is built on rights, where everybody focuses on, you know, what their right is very often. So what happens? So the employee says, you know, it's my right to get paid, and the employer says, well, it's my right to have you do the work, and then they form a union, and then they strike, and then nobody does anything. And everybody's focusing on rights all day. That's a bit of a superficial and extreme view. But the point is, we have to focus on chovot. We have to focus on what we have to do, and every individual works on what my own obligation is, and everybody fulfills their own obligation. Mimele, everybody else will get their rights, right? If I think about my obligation to take care and take responsibility of property and of other people's property, so then everybody else will have the right to have their property taken care of. For example, so it's, you know, don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Essentially, here's the Ramchal predating JFK by a long time. Okay, so he says like this: Yesod HaChasidut v'sholesh avodat mima hu. A lot of the editions point out that the first 4 words, not by coincidence, and the same as the Rambam does, Yesod HaChasidut v'sholesh ha'avodah, the first letter of each of those 4 words forms out the name of Hashem, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But he says the foundation of Chasidut and the root of Avodah Tmima, of our service in this world, Shitbaler v'yitamet etzel adam al chovato be'olamo, v'lema, tzarich shiyasim mabato megamato b'chol asher omer. The first thing is yitbarer v'yitamet. And again, it has to be clear and it has to be emet. It has to be clear and it has to be true, meaning it has to be something that I am aware of and that I understand. What is my chovah be'olamo? What is each one of ours responsibility and duty to do here? Chazal tell us in a number of places that Adam la'amal yulad, that's already in the Tanakh. But it says, Adam la'amal yulad, a person is born to work, to exert oneself. And everybody is going to end up exerting themselves. Everybody is going to end up with a certain amount of amal. The question is, what are you working for? What are you working towards? The person has to know what they're here for and where we're going to put our energies. We spoke, those who were here earlier today in the Lunch and Learn. So we discussed the idea of trade-offs. How everything in life ultimately is a trade-off, right? When you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. You're working hard at something, you're by definition not working at something else. So we're going to be working at something. The question is, what is it that we're working for? What is it that we're working towards? We have to know. ונאמר שאומרים חכמינו, זכרונם לברכה, הוא שאדם לא נברא, אלא להתענג על השם וליהנות מזיו שכינתו. Again, so we talk about the chovah. We said it doesn't sound so good, right? Duty, work, amal, all these things sound very intense and very difficult and very restraining. He says you should know, says the Ramchal. We're going to get to all the hard work soon. But the point is, what's the purpose of it all? What are we here for? And he says the purpose here is not just to work hard and not to have a hard time and not to be constrained and to, to lose out. But he says, Adam lo nivra ela litaneg al Hashem v'le'anot miziv shchinato. Person was created for the purpose of pleasure. Person was created for the purpose of oneg, but real oneg, not the fleeting sort of physical pleasure that many people chase and never reach. But the real pleasure is le'anot miziv shchinato. That is closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's real, spiritual, transcendental pleasure, that which is eternal. Zeu ha'ta'anug ha'amiti va'idun ha'gadol mikol ha'idonim she'yocholim limatzeh. If a person could imagine what is the greatest possible pleasure, that one could possibly imagine, that is this. That is le'anot miziv shchinato. That is to achieve closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what a person will achieve in the world to come, in the Olam Haba. That's the greatest pleasure there can be, and that's why we're here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. He's not trying to trip us up. He's not trying to trick us. He's not trying to make us, with all these. We'll talk about why there are so many temptations, but give us all these temptations and say, no, you can't have anything. It's not the purpose. That's not what it's for. In Parashat Bereshit, when Hashem creates Adam and Chava, but the first command is give everybody remembers that it says you can't eat from that tree. But before it says you can't eat from that tree, it says Mikol Eitz Hagan Tochel. You can eat from all the other trees, right? It's not just what you can't do; it's what you can. There's a purpose, but there are rules. So he says this is the greatest pleasure that can be. But the catch is the place of this great reward is not here. The place is Olam Haba. That was the purpose of it all. The way to get there, the way to achieve this ultimate reward and this ultimate pleasure, which is in the Olam Haba, you have to go through the preparation, you have to go through the work, which is Olam Hazeh. This world is like the corridor before the world to come. And the way that we get there, the means towards that end, that is via the mitzvot that we've been commanded, that one has to fulfill here in order to achieve that. And therefore Hashem saw to it to place us in this world first, through that which we have at our disposal here. You'll get to the ultimate goal, Today is about working, right? And tomorrow, Olam Haba is to receive that reward. Now he says, when you think about it, you'll see that really the ultimate perfection, the ultimate reward that we're going to get is only by coming close to Hashem. etc. Everything that is in this world, that is physical, that is fleeting, that you think it is enjoyment, you think it is the ultimate enjoyment, that is not. And the proof of this is very, very simple. That whenever there is a physical pleasure, if you have too much of it, so you feel sick, right? That's the way it works. You take food as an example. You have very, very tasty food or whatever. What happens? People want to get the ultimate enjoyment. So you eat and you have another piece of cake and another piece of cake and another piece of cake, and then you can't get up, and then you feel sick, right? It's the same. It's the same with any type of physical pleasure, that the more of it you have, you always want more. But the more of it you have, ultimately you reach a point where it's no longer bringing you any benefit. Sometimes it wasn't actually bringing you any benefit in the first place, which is the calories and whatever else. But it gets to a point where it becomes too much. Real pleasure, real enjoyment, the spiritual benefit that's going to be. So that works in the opposite way. That's why, by the way, anything in the physical world, anything, with time, when time goes on, it decreases in quality. Anything that is of a spiritual nature, as time goes on, it increases in quality. It gets better. It does not deteriorate with age. That's why wine is very, very significant. And that's why we have wine at Kiddush, and we have wine at any significant life cycle event, etc. Because why specifically wine? Because wine is that thing which is in the physical world, but it is a taste of the spiritual, because wine gets better with age, as right, it does not deteriorate. It gets to a greater quality. So that's the idea that really, the things we see around us. And again, why do we have a taste of enjoyment, a taste in the physical world? It's not just there to tempt you. It's not just there to distract you. It's there to teach you, saying this is what pleasure is. This is a taste of what the real pleasure is, but the real pleasure that is in the world to come. So it's something that we can understand. So now you could ask a question. Says the Ramchal, okay, so I understand Hashem created the world. He created it for us to get benefit, to get all this enjoyment, ultimately to cleave, to come close to Him. So why do we have to go? No, we said, but that's only going to be Olam Hazeh. That's only the world to come. We have to go through this world first, all the distractions and all the temptations and all the difficulty and all the work, etc., in order to get there. So the obvious question is, why did He set it up that way? Wouldn't it have been, right, we're talking about the ultimate good, so couldn't it have just been that Hashem created us directly, immediately in the world to come? Why bother with this whole Olam Hazeh? What's it here for? It's just making things harder. So he says no. He says actually, and this is the paradox, but he says the reason is, in order for it to be the ultimate good, in order for you to receive the ultimate reward, it has to be in such a way that you've earned it. It has to be in such a way that you've worked for it, and therefore it will be greater than if it was just something that we were given for free. And that's why it was set up in this way. He says, first, man has to have the effort, has to have the opportunity to earn it himself. We have the opportunity to work, to try and attach ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the performance of mitzvot, through the test that we face here. And then, right, mitzvot. So Hashem put us here with this opportunity, but also with the pitfalls. Also, there are many things you may have noticed in this world that distance people from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All sorts of the material and physical drives that the person has. If a person gets carried away and gets too attached to those, then you will be you'll go very far away from the ultimate good, from the real pleasure. ונמצא שהוא מושם באמת בתוך המלחמה החזקה, כי כל ענייני העולם בין הטוב לרע עיניהם ניסיונות לאדם. And so ultimately you're placed in the situation, we have this world is a milchama. It's an ongoing war. And that's the famous mashal that the Chovot HaLevavot says that the famous mashal, he says, where there was an old man and he saw a person, an accomplished general, coming back from the battlefield. And he says to him, you think the war is over? He says, the war's only just beginning. He says that the war you faced against the external enemies, that's easy. That's easy. But the war against the internal war, the internal struggle against the Yetzer Hara, day in, day out, that war never ends. There's no ceasefire. There's no armistice agreement in that one. And that one continues, and that's the difficulty, and that's the challenge, and that's why we need to learn Mesillat Yesharim and the such to know how to overcome that. But his point is, it's not just to trip you up. Sometimes we have this feeling that everything, Torah and religion and whatever, and it's there just to make things difficult. No. This is the way to ultimately provide you with the ultimate good. You have to know how to get there, and you have to know how to get through it. But ultimately, that reward is waiting at the end. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash